So, what makes leaders incredibly influential, even to the point where when they leave the room, their influence lingers, creating lasting change and impact? Listen, Norval and I today, with more than 40 years of combined leadership experience across churches and nonprofits and marketplace places, we want to walk alongside you, give you some practical lessons so that when you walk away today, you're going to have some habits that can help you transform not only your life and leadership, but the organizations that God has called you to lead. We both came with a list of 5 incredible habits. We haven't heard from each other yet what those are, so we'll unpack those today as we do that. So Norval, I'm excited for us to look at some of these things. I know you've led in different countries in a global context. As you reflect on this list, what do you think is going to be the same? What do you think is going to be different?
Well, I'm curious about it too, and I guess the first disclaimer is that this is not based on research.
Sure.
This is a personal. Of course, we both did a little bit of research, and some of our things will match what's out there. But this is really different kinds of experience. I've had long-term experience, but I've never ran a restaurant,
Sure.
which you have.
Yeah.
I've never led a large number of staff. So those are some differences. I think some will match.
Yeah.
Some won't. Now, yeah, I'm just curious.
Well, Norval, I'm really excited because I think we're both coming with a sincere heart to see Christ magnified in our life and in our leadership. So let's just go ahead and jump in. I'll give you the honors. Tell us, what's the first habit that you think of when you think of influential leadership?
No brainer. I call it a daily spiritual rhythm or a rule of life. And so successful leaders, and I'm thinking Christian leaders. But, I've read some things about even in the non-Christian leadership circles talking about some time where you stop and they meditate and they do whatever is it, the practice in the other religions. For us, it's connecting with Jesus.
That's right.
But I believe for a leader, and this is a lesson I've learned a little later in leadership, is that you have to move beyond the quiet time in the morning into a rule of life that really practices the presence, as we would say from Brother Lawrence, many times a day. Some folks are talking about I'm trying to practice a 3 times a day spiritual discipline where I have my morning, but also pause at midday. And before I go to bed, last thing I do is connect with Jesus again.
Man, that resonates so deeply with me because, again, in my own life, I've just seen the incredible impact that kind of daily rhythm with the Lord has and can have. And again, just the practice of that. I like that phrase, rule of life. I know there's a lot of history behind that and a lot of weight that carries because of that history. But I find it so incredibly true, right? It's the daily practices of prayer and study and fellowship and relationship. So all of that to say, deep amen. It's actually not on my list, but I think that's such an incredibly true thing for Christian leaders, irrespective of where they are in life and leadership.
And it is a rediscovery of a millennial tradition.
Yeah.
Because it's something that started in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
With Lectio Divina and then Lectio Divina is a slow reading of Scripture.
Yeah.
And then there's another practice by Ignatius Loyola called the Examen, where you finish your day by kind of rewinding, playing back your day and looking at where God was manifested in your life, but also looking at any sins that you might need to ask forgiveness for.
Amen.
And it has been so great for me to finish my day looking at that and going to bed thinking, hey, listen, I close my eyes to sleep now, knowing that I've celebrated what God's done in my life today, and I've also clear the air in my relationship with God in terms of the places where I missed the mark.
Amen. And there's such a freedom. There's such a freedom when we do that. I'll confess, Norval, I think that's a brilliant one. It does really dovetail into the first one that I'd like to share, if I may.
Go for it.
I think the first habit that came to my mind as I reflected, what are the 5 habits of the most influential Christian leaders? It's honestly consistency. I think in our day and age, there's going to be this draw to the next thing that can accomplish the task. But even when with what you were just describing, it's 1,000-year-old practices, right?
Yes.
And I think the most effective Christian leaders are those who are consistent in applying and living out habits that acknowledge the consistency in the same direction has a longer impact and a longer legacy than, kind of hopping from idea to idea, topic to topic. And I really put, even in my note, a reflection on consistency is another way of saying discipline, like a life of personal discipline that maintains those habits. And I think whether that's in message, in faith, in their actions, right? Whether they're in a marketplace segment or even in a church, consistency in those actions is going to make them incredibly influential, because people will see that what they're doing isn't a passing fad or isn't a thing that they happen to be doing now, but it's actually something that they've committed their life to. And once they see that, they recognize there's a deeper and more sincere or maybe a more authentic belief in that transformational impact.
Yeah. And here's a thought. Consistency in this and in any other area will generate a level of trust in people that if they're consistent in this and in this, well, then I can trust them with something else.
That's right.
Jesus said, those who are faithful in the little will be faithful in the much. And so God will entrust us greater things. I think people will do that too.
Yeah.
If we're consistent in some of the smaller things, it's leadership by example.
Well, and I love that you brought it up as trust. I actually didn't make that connection in my own mind, but I think that's exactly the root, right? I think we're living in a day and age that has the lowest institutional trust in history. Business trust is down, nonprofit trust is down, government trust is down, church trust is down. Across every segment of society, if you're an institution, trust is so incredibly down. In fact, I sat with a marketing guy the other day, and he said, Daniel, none of your marketing as a business, as a nonprofit is going to work unless you are the face, unless someone is the face of that, because people don't trust organizations anymore. They trust people.
And those people need to be consistent.
That's right. And that's at the foundation, I think, of it is they only trust the people when they see them as unequivocally or without reservation consistent in what they're doing.
Ooh,
yeah.
That is really good, Daniel.
Well,
I love it.
It's what I'm seeing. So what's your second one, man?
Okay, my number 2 is easy, but so many people disregard it. It's interesting that I put it personally by I went on and looked online, and it was there. Same number I put. 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night.
Oh man.
Yep. I put it in, and it's interesting. There's another one that I wrote about health, but I think this one is separate. There is this danger. We're all in danger of living in this hyper stimulated life. I've read some time ago that the world is now illuminated by LED lights. 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, you saw if the International Space Station was circling the Earth in taking film of the world, it would be nowhere near where we are now, where the planet is lit. Streets are lit, houses are lit, buildings are lit. And I've read once that this is doing something, changing our circadian rhythm. It's doing something to the human brain that we are overexposed to light, and it's harder to sleep. It's harder to relax because we need that darkness. It's like if you go to the extreme north latitudes. I've had that experience. I was in Moscow and I didn't have proper curtains, and the sun set around 11 o'clock and came up at 4. My wife and I couldn't sleep. And so in a world that is illuminated, we need to learn to turn down the lights, turn off the lights. And I believe that will be a measurable advantage.
Yeah.
A leader that can take a good 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, which is a number that is healthy. More than that is a little lazy. Less than that, you can live on it. But I believe it'll affect your performance. It'll affect your capacity the next day.
Man, that is such a good word, Norval. I mean, even earlier today, I was reflecting on like when I was working on my master's, and man, you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get some work done. You know, the family goes to bed, and I'm sitting on the floor next to my wife until midnight doing more homework, right? Or gosh, when I was in my undergrad and I was getting on average, 4 hours of sleep a night. Was I able to accomplish some tasks? Yes, but that isn't leadership. That's certainly not influential leadership. The kind of relationships and mental work that I think the most influential leaders are called to engage in needs rest and needs that kind of ability to focus, which only comes from minds which have been in that space. And I would even argue, in addition to the 7 or 8 hours of sleep, I'd argue get at least a half hour of boredom in your day, so your mind can actually reflect on what it's taking in. I find myself, there's a famous John Mark Comer book, Addicted to Busy. I can find myself listening to so many things, engaging in so many different books or sermons or resources that I don't really reflect on them sufficient in the moment. And so I gotta have that mental space where there's enough quiet for me to even be able to engage in that. But none of that'll happen if I haven't gotten the rest that my body physiologically needs. And there was a time in my life, believe it or not, where I thought, okay, so if I need 8 hours of sleep a night, over 10 nights, as long as I'm getting 80 hours, it's fine. And so I do four hours for half of them, and then, try and load it up on the second half of the week. And that just doesn't work. It's actually the consistency of that sleep that I think is so necessary. Yeah. So man, that's a good one. I really love
consistency
that practice.
Again.
I know.
So what's your third? What's your next one?
Yeah. So my second one's actually, when I started on this, I was really thinking about the church leader, but I think this is true for all leaders. If you want to be an influential leader, you've got to have an external focus. And I don't mean that means you lose sight of the people that you're directly leading or serving, but you've got to constantly keep an orientation that remembers the outsider. I'll just look at the church leader here for a moment. If all you're doing is within the four walls of the church, you don't actually engage in your community in any meaningful way, then you don't really see what's going on. You don't have a good feel for the hurts and the heartaches of the larger body, or not the larger body, the larger community around you, particularly the unbelieving community. And if we're going to, like Jesus, be able to look and see the people that are, hurting and helpless like sheep without a shepherd, we have to see them. We got to be around them. We got to be in their midst. And I think in some circles, it can be easy for the Christian to kind of cloister off or segregate or separate off into the purely Christian bubble and lose sight of that external focus. But even for the marketplace leader, I'd say, hey, if you want to continue to honor God in your marketplace, yes, care for and lead your people well. Do not lose sight of those who have never encountered your business, because those are people that you can still carry an impact on, learn about others in your market segment, others that are in other sectors of society, so that you can continue to engage in the larger, broader narrative that God is working out in the community and society around you.
Outwardly focused. I like that. And I was thinking as you were describing it as applied to church leaders, I was thinking exactly about the marketplace leaders, where the focus, the successful entrepreneur focuses not so much on his people, but on the client, if the purpose of the business is to serve, then It's a quest to find people out there that I can serve better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's again, a special habit and a special practice of the leaders that are of particular influence. They have a time in their schedule, in their practice to say, I'm going to engage outside of my regular circles.
That's great.
Yeah. What you got?
My number 3 might not please everybody because here's the thing. I called it deep work in the morning, grunt work in the afternoon.
Mm.
Do your meaningful thought work early. Leave the automated, like the mechanical, the stuff that requires less reflection and thinking for later on. Some talk about doing bursts. You do 90 minutes and then do what you said. Your boredom time, your time when you're doing nothing, and replenishing, and then loading up again. The reason I say it's controversial a little bit is because people talk about morning persons and night owls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a morning person. I'm up at 5:15 in the morning, and I don't like to go to bed after 10 o'clock during weekdays. So then the night owls will say, well, and first of all, I've heard some people say real productive time is early time. So it's almost like you have to adjust to that rhythm. I'm not dogmatic on it, but the fact is, it's not written in your DNA that you are a morning person or a night owl, although there are genes related to it. But it can be trained.
Yeah.
You can be trained to have that discipline of focusing on what you need, writing, thinking strategically, making plans, and that kind of stuff in the morning. And then leave the afternoon I was going to say, for things you don't have to think much about, like recording a podcast.
It's funny you bring that one up because I think in different seasons I might have argued that more, right? When I was working in restaurants and in the market, man, we were only open for lunch and dinner. And so, I was getting home at 1 or 2 in the morning because that was the end of my day. Not because I necessarily was a night owl at the time, but I was functioning on like a shifted time scale. And I think the sentiment of what you're saying is know when you should be doing the brain work and know when you should be doing the body work, right? Like there's just some things that you just kind of have to do, and you got to kind of grunt through that don't require the deep reflective or reflexive thinking and rumination and kind of that practice. And as a leader, I think you need to know when in your day you're going to need to do those things. And I think, likewise, it's, hey, the most important or the most difficult conversations I'm going to do at the start of my day because it's the freshest, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, I think I may have shared either on LinkedIn or even in person with you. My wife and I found, even for our marriage, that the most of the quality time we were getting together was after the kids went to bed. And so we were getting in bed and spending time together and talking and catching up and all those kinds of things. But it was the end of our day. It was the last that we had. We were giving each other the leftovers of our energy and our focus and our attention and all those things. And so naturally we were a bit more prone to, some less than positive interactions in the midst of that. Right. And I love my wife and things are good, but we discovered that if we just have coffee at the start of the day together, we just give each other the first 30 minutes of our day. Hey, we're going to sit, we're going to have coffee. We're going to say a little prayer together. That simple practice, recognizing, wait a second, this relationship, the clearest relationship of the gospel from the scriptures, or one of the 3 primary relationships that reflect the gospel, a marriage, it deserves a prime position in the course of my day. It's going to get the first one, and we're going to sit here together.
That's a great practical recommendation
and
right there.
So you talk about where is it needed. For me, my marriage isn't a grunt thing. It's a like it's a relationship that requires my focus, my attention, my heart, my affection, and that's going to be best if I can give it to in the first parts of my day.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
That's
I like it.
One.
All right, so I love how we're just so different. We're coming at these from different ways. Norval, you're going to laugh when I say this. My next habit, believe it or not, I wrote authorship. I think the most effective, I think the most influential Christian leaders are authors. And my argument would be real simple. I'm going to give you some names: Paul, Peter, John. I'm going to go old school: Jeremiah, Isaiah, Moses. The most influential leaders that God has placed among his people were leaders that actually didn't experience the influence during their lifetime purely, but experienced influence for generations to come because they wrote things down. I have so undervalued that in the course of my own life. And it's something that God's been stirring and wrestling on me just personally on, because there's so many unbelievably valuable things that we have inherited from years past. I mean, we were talking about John Bunyan as a staff just the other day because he wrote Pilgrim's Progress, a book that God used to influence generations of believers in their faith, in their walk. To this day. I mean, we talk about C.S. Lewis because he wrote so many things. And so I think that if we're going to be influential Christian leaders, we want to have a good practice of authorship, writing down the things that God is showing us and teaching us, so that it can be shared with others. The power of testimony is unequivocal in the kingdom, and I think I have historically forgotten the importance that testimony doesn't just have to be verbal, right? It doesn't just have to be video. The recording of that for a longer period is just so valuable. And here's the last thing I'll say on that. If the Old Testament can be summarized as remember, right? Mm-hmm. Remember. Somebody once said the phrase, rather than a good memory, have a short pencil. Meaning you've used the pencil to record all of the things, so you don't have to have a long memory. Just have a short pencil. And for me, that has been something God's really wrestling with me as far as a habit.
That's a great one. That I don't think we think about it that much. We think writing is for the greats. It's am I going to write the next Mere Christianity? I don't think so. But
maybe not.
Or the next Pilgrim's Progress. I don't know. But leaving behind, it reminds me of, I have an uncle who was a pastor, was a great leader, and he wrote a book that nobody's really going to read except the people that he wrote it for. He wrote it for his grandkids.
There you go.
So he wrote, the story of his life and some things, and just wrote it for his grandkids.
Wow.
Dr. Al von Stieg, one of ILI's founders, did the same thing. If for nothing else, you don't have them, but I have grandkids, write them for your children, for your grandchildren, for their children.
Right. And think about the incredible gift that would be if you had received that. I think that's again, you want to talk about great influence. That's a real meaningful place to put it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, man.
The number 4 in my list, I borrowed this from one of the sites that I saw. It's called Intentional Relational Touchpoints. So, successful leaders are, let's say this: leaders who fail often are lonely. And lead alone. Yeah. It's lonely at the top, says the
leader who's not leading.
Says the leader who's not leading, or the leader who is about to fall from the top. Mm-hmm. And so we've had a lot of moral failures, leadership failures, all kinds of stuff. And it's always about being alone. And so to be successful as a leader, I believe we need a few people in our lives that can, well, let's say, keep us in line, as facetiously, but actually keep us on the high road, keep us on the narrow path. So things like that. For instance, we talk about every visionary needs an integrator. Everybody who is a dreamer, who has always seen the past, needs somebody to tell him the implications of those visions. And so every visionary leader needs somebody who can, I always joke about it, that my wife is that person for me. I'm a visionary. She is clearly an integrator. So when I have these magnificent ideas, she can see immediately what implications, and she can tell me five reasons why that won't work. And that gives me now a counterpoint to my semi-delirious dreaming. And so every visionary leader needs that person who will hold them to the reality. And because we're sinners, we all need to be accountable to somebody. And so those relational touch points where you are surrounded by people as a leader who can call you out on sins, who can call you out on mission drift, and other and things like that, who can call you down from your high and lofty visions and dreams. That is fundamental.
I think it's so funny because my number 4, unequivocal accountability.
There you go.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Norval. I think the most influential leaders have an almost unnatural level of openness with a select few people that can well, in some senses call them out, but in other senses remind them of truth, right? Leaders can sometimes even be depressed over circumstances around them, and they need that same person to come and say, hey, wait a second, listen, buddy, you've actually accomplished a lot. Let me point it out to you. Let me remind you. Let me pull you back up from that depressive state because of, whatever the circumstance may be. But I think, again, an influential leader needs to have somebody who is looking through their finances to see how you're spending your money. How are you budgeting? What is that looking like? Looking through their internet histories, backgrounds, everything else. Like, this needs to be open so that I can see what is influencing you and where are you going and what dangers are around you there. That see who you're traveling with and what those arrangements are like. People that have carte blanche or just clear open access into your life so that you've got those guardrails. I think I think sometimes as leaders we can begin to, quite frankly, delude ourselves into thinking, well, that would never happen to me.
Yeah. That's the moment where you're in the most danger, when you think, man, that area I'm not I can err here, but not here.
Yeah.
Well,
we may think, oh man, I know where my, the phrase, I know where my goat's tied, or, I know where my struggles are and it's not over here. Well, it's not over there right now, but it doesn't mean it won't be there. And I think just the consistency of the leaders that have carried the longest influence is deeply rooted back to, and how did you said relational touch points? Is that how you phrased it?
Yeah, relational touch points, because I'm thinking of daily habits. So you have those relationships and you're, how in ILI, we have autonomy to do things, but we like to run it by each other.
Yeah.
Simple as that. I made a decision. I have the authority to go and implement it, but I'll take it to Tim or I'll take it to you, and we'll bat that idea around, and you might show me some way that I can make it better, or if it's perfect, it's good, it goes. So same thing, those touch points, those moments where we are having these shallow conversations that can turn deep in a moment if necessary.
Well, and I would just, I think, add to that the invitation for access by consistently providing in those relational touch points that, hey, I'm inviting you to take a look here. I'm inviting you to be aware on this part of my life, intentionally engaging in that practice, and making that a regular habit in the midst of conversation. And again, I'm not saying we do this with just random strangers, but with individuals that we trust ultimately have have our followership to Jesus as their core interest, right? It's not what's the most comfortable for me as their best interest or anything else. It's no, they want to see Christ magnified in me more than anything else, including our own very relationship. That's the kind of,
it's more than what's
access.
best for me.
Right.
It's about what's best for Jesus in me.
There you go. I like that. I like that phrase.
Because I've always thought, yeah, those people have my best interests in mind, but that's not quite there. They really have the kingdom's best interest in mind. And as I am part of the kingdom of God, as I am a follower of Jesus, as I strive to look like Jesus, that's what they help me with. Nice.
All right, so I'm gonna share my fifth, and then.
So we finally agreed on one.
We finally agreed on one, man. We got one in. Let's see how this one is. All right, this is the habit. I think the fifth habit I've got listed for the most influential Christian leaders. Habit number 5: they serve. I think influential Christian leaders have a heart of service. Their influence is actually the result of, not the target of, their actions. Their heart and their target is loving people in a service-minded and service-oriented way that results in them earning influence in their life, not because it's what they were seeking after, but because they long for that person to encounter Christ or experience Christ or have the kind of kingdom impact. They longed to see that person reaching their desired objective and goal, and therefore they have a unabashed service orientation. I think that's a habit of influential Christian leaders. And if that's not our heart, if our heart is focused on the influence side, I think that's where you start getting into some subtly skewed or destructive even patterns. And so I think if influential Christian leaders are going to be shockingly service oriented in their thinking and mind.
It's so interesting how servant leadership has become such a buzzword everywhere. And it would be natural to be used in Christian circles. And we are called to serve, not only to serve, we are called to be the model of how to lead through service for the world.
That's right.
Because we follow the servant leader par excellence.
The servant God.
A servant God who sent a servant Jesus to,
right.
Philippians 2. But the rest of the world, the marketplace leaders, the even political, talk about leadership through service as leadership, the servant as leader, who is a servant first. Robert Greenleaf and all that kind of stuff. It is such a different and such a different way to lead. And honestly, although the world talks about it and they got all their models and everything, a true servant leader is only one who is following the servant leader, Jesus.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I heard a guy once, and this was so helpful. He was actually confessing. He was confessing for him that he was describing servant leadership, and as he was describing it, he was talking about. So as a marketplace leader, and he was just confessing. He said, guys, I sat with my sales team and I talked about how service equals sales, right? By serving, we'll get sales. And he acknowledged that literally even on the S for service, he had put it as a $sign. And he was confessing because he recognized, wait a second, I serve because I love people. And the motivation behind that is the sincere love, and that's where it extends from our followership of Jesus. Right? We're secure in the Father. We talk about this as servant leadership. We're secure in the Father. We understand our identity and our calling as sons and daughters, and from that place of security, we're actually positioned not only to love ourselves, but to love others as ourselves. And that kind of radical service recognizes, it's not about this moment or this sale. It's about loving you and serving you because you're made in the image of God, because you have value to Him so much that He would send His Son to die for you. So I'm going to serve you. God has put you along my path or in my presence or in my community. I'm going to serve you. And I think it's that kind of and I'm learning this even from some of our non-Western brothers and sisters. It's that kind of relational attitude that results in the larger, longer, bigger influence over time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You may not do something radical today, but that's when 10 years from now, suddenly you're the overnight success that nobody knew about, because you were faithful in regularly serving the people in front of you every day to the utmost of your ability.
Awesome. Servant leadership, such an important thing. It is a buzzword today, but it's a 2,000-year-old practice, because that's what Jesus taught, and that's what he modeled. So.
That's right. That's right. Well, Norval, what was your fifth, man? What was
my
last
number
habit?
5 is so mundane. I call it personal well-being, and it amounts to 2 things: a well-balanced, healthy diet,
Okay,
and regular, consistent, moderate exercise. I just can't see success and longevity in leadership without taking care of your health. And I've heard preachers talk about this. And sometimes when we think about healthy diet and all of that, we think about obese folks, people like me who need to lose a little weight here in the middle section. But I heard this pastor talk about another friend whose problem was that he was so focused on winning the lost that he didn't eat properly and sufficiently. He obviously didn't exercise sufficiently, but didn't sleep enough. And that was killing him. And God spoke to him.
Wow.
And he nearly had a heart attack, or he had a heart attack. And then God said, listen, you don't take care of this body, you won't be able to influence on the long term. So, and they even talk about people who checked out as in
died,
didn't finish well.
Oh, wow.
Because they didn't have time to finish well, because they finished when they were 35 or 40 because of bad habits about diet and exercise, taking care of your body, making sure that you are healthy. I have made it a goal to be old. I am older but not old, but my goal is to be old and healthy. I want to outlive my parents, who lived to their upper 80s. So, and I said this: I want to be the longest living male in my family. The women are hard to beat, because some were up in the 90s, and but the men typically, as it is everywhere. But that's one of my personal life goals, is to be the longest living member of my family.
Wow.
Male.
Yeah.
And to do that and continue to serve God, there are things I should have done when I was 20. I didn't. But I started at 40, and I've reaped the benefits of what I started, how I changed at 40s. Like Paul, I say I'm not there, but I'm striving for it.
Man, I think you're spot on. I think there are so many Christian leaders that are faithfully doing that, and when we think about the ones that have had some of the greatest influence, they've been able to steward their body well and faithfully practice that. It's certainly one that God's convicting me over. In fact, I was just with a guy, a friend of ILI. He's been a judge for, I guess, 30, 40 years in Georgia and here in the States. Incredible leader, incredibly influential. He's had an incredible life, but he sat across the table from me and we were talking about some things. I said, wait a second, how old are you? And I realized, I thought the man was maybe in his 50s, maybe 60. But all of this came into a question when I realized, wait a second, yeah, you've already retired. So he's in his mid 70s and he's in great shape, doing really well, and incredibly sharp. I mean, still literally judging cases, significant cases,
Wow.
In his mid 70s. And he even testified to me in that moment. He said, well, man, listen, he said, I get up in the morning, I do some strength training every day. and I make sure I get 8 or 9 miles in every week. Worth of cardio. And I went, really? He goes, oh yeah. He said, it's been transformational. He said, I've been doing it since I was in my 20s. And I went, oh my gosh. And on my desk in my office right now is a book by David Mathis called A Little Theology of Exercise. That just speaking to where God's convicting me on this particular practice, and trying to find that good place for that habit. So I'll say to your list, Norval, on that one, at least, a definite amen. A definite amen. Would you? Okay, so if somebody's made it this far,
let me add one thing to my last one.
Okay,
because I think there needs to be a third one, and it is very simple. Go do your physicals. Be preventative.
Yeah.
Don't wait until you get a heart attack to put a stent on, if you can prevent it.
Yeah.
So, added to the exercise and the diet, I think the good stewardship of the body is doing, seeking professional help, but to prevent rather than to cure. Another personal experience. My father and all of my uncles were either hypertense or had cardiac problems and all kinds of things. Several died of heart attacks and things like that. And so I decided when I was in my 30s, I was going to do the treadmill cardiac test on a regular basis from when I was very young.
No kidding.
And so I've been doing that countless times. And it's one little thing that you can do is go after prevention. Yes.
That's good. Well, that's a good word there, Norval. Well, we've been here for a minute. We've gone through these things. Can you quickly just hit us one more time? List off those 5 habits that you think the most influential Christian leaders need to be practicing.
Okay, number 1, the daily spiritual habit or discipline, a rule of life. That's what I called it.
Yeah, that's so
beyond a devotional time. Number 2, 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Make sure you get enough sleep.
That's a good word.
Deep work in the morning, grunt work in the afternoon. Number 4, intentional relational touch points. And then number 5, take care of yourself. Personal well-being, good stewardship of the body.
Man, I love that. Listen, leader, those are 5 incredible habits. I think if you engage in those, it will change your life. I'm going to list my 5 off for you just one more time. Consistency. Be incredibly consistent in the habits that God places in your life and in the habits that you choose. If you're not consistent, you lose some of that trust, some of that authenticity, and you're not going to see the long-term effects of a life lived in consistent followership. Second, don't lose sight of that external influence that God has called you to have. You've got a set of people that God's calling you to lead, but don't lose sight of the external people that He's calling you to reach. That's the passion that He has for the harvest. Number 3, be an author. Record or write the things that God is teaching you and showing you in your life. It's going to help you reflect. It's going to help you carry influence in the lives of others as you share and testify to what God's doing in you. Number 4, have unequivocal accountability in your life. I know that's a big word. It just means this. Let people have unbelievably open access to your life, your finances, your technology, your appointments, your schedule. Let a set of incredibly trustworthy people see all of those things and to speak life and truth into you. They're going to help you avoid the pitfalls that you and I can make on any given day. They're going to protect you. They're going to guard you. They're going to keep you. Number 5, serve. Service is the fundamental and foundational action that will result in influence. That's not the focus. That's not the point. The point is people were made in the image of God, and we love them dearly because we see God reflected in them, and we know that God loves them. He sent His Son to die for them. And so it's our privilege to come and serve these people, helping them to encounter God and advance His kingdom. That kind of service results in transformational impact, not just in individuals, but in communities, nations, peoples. That is what's going to be unbelievably influential in your life. Norval, I think we've got some really practical things here. I loved hearing your list from your perspective and your experience. And I love that even though we came from different places, man, God still brought, I think, some really fruitful things and even something in common.
I loved your list as well. There are a lot of attitudes that a leader needs to have in order to be successful success rightly defined.
Right.
Because that'll be a whole another episode about what is success.
Yeah.
But yes, I think the lists are complementary in a way, and we ended up with 9, not 10, but 9 great insights for leaders.
I love it. Listen, leaders, I want to invite you at the International Leadership Institute. Listen, we believe that the kingdom of God, the gospel message of hope will accelerate as leaders are equipped with the 8 core values of the most effective Christian leaders. We want to help meet you in that place. We want to resource you. You can find things at iliteam.org. There you'll learn more about how leaders around the world are discovering these 8 core values, stepping into these kinds of habits, and ultimately advancing the kingdom in their context. Listen, there's too many helpless and hopeless people that don't know the hope that we have in Christ. Join the mission and join more than 400,000 men and women who've been transformed by this experience. We'd love to see you there, iliteam.org.